I'm Charlotte. At 39, I finally understand what true family means. And it's not always about blood. 2 years ago, my parents' will left their entire estate to my brother because he has children. I was devastated, betrayed, and utterly alone. Little did I know that their lawyer's unexpected call would lead to the most difficult yet transformative journey of my life. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I never expected to feel so peaceful sitting here in my garden, watching butterflies dance between the lavender bushes I planted last spring. The irony isn't lost on me. This property, the very one I fought so hard for, has become my sanctuary. But getting here nearly broke me. Growing up in the affluent suburb of Oak Ridge Hills, I was the dependable daughter. While my younger brother Ryan chased dreams and made messes, I maintained perfect grades, followed rules, and built a stable life. Our parents, Eleanor and William Bennett, were pillars of the community. Dad ran a successful insurance agency, while Mom managed their considerable real estate investments. They raised us with clear expectations: education first, family second, community service always. I followed their blueprint perfectly. After graduating with honors in accounting, I built a respectable career as a financial controller for Meridian Healthcare. I bought a sensible townhouse 20 minutes from my parents. I called them every Sunday and visited for dinner twice monthly like clockwork. My life was organized, predictable, and, looking back now, safely uninspired. Ryan took a different path. 4 years younger than me, he possessed the easy charm and risk-taking spirit I never had. While I calculated spreadsheets, he backpacked through South America. While I contributed to my 401k, he started, and failed at, 3 different businesses. While I remained single, focused on my career, he married Isabel, a vivacious interior designer my parents adored on site, and quickly produced the grandchildren they had been not so subtly hinting about for years. Charlotte, have you thought about freezing your eggs? Mom would ask during our Sunday calls. You're not getting any younger, and Morgan and Lily are growing so fast. They need cousins close to their age. I'm focusing on the Baker account right now, Mom, I'd reply, redirecting the conversation to safer territory. It could mean a promotion if I land it. Dad would inevitably chime in. That's wonderful, sweetheart. But remember, at the end of the day, it's family that matters. The irony of his words would hit me much later. Ryan and Isabel settled just 10 minutes from our parents, in a Victorian fixer-upper they could barely afford. Despite his erratic employment history, they maintained an enviable lifestyle. My parents helped, of course, covering private school tuition for the girls, financing Ryan's latest business venture, a boutique coffee roastery, and frequently taking the whole family on luxury vacations. I never begrudged them this support. Ryan had given them what I couldn't: grandchildren, Sunday dinners with noisy conversation instead of polite updates, the continuation of the Bennett name. Besides, I was financially independent and proud of it. My carefully managed investments and steady career advancement meant I didn't need their help. Everything changed 15 months ago, when Dad suffered a massive stroke during his morning golf game. He lingered in the hospital for 3 weeks before Mom made the heartbreaking decision to remove life support. We all sat around his bed, Mom, Ryan, Isabel, the girls, and me, as he took his final breaths. He's with the angels now, 7-year-old Morgan said solemnly, while 4-year-old Lily climbed onto my lap, not quite understanding why everyone was crying. Mom seemed to age a decade overnight. Her perfectly colored hair grew dull, her designer clothes hung looser on her frame. After 52 years of marriage, she was adrift without her partner. I immediately stepped up, handling the funeral arrangements, managing the insurance paperwork, organizing the estate documents. "What would I do without you, Charlotte?" Mom said, squeezing my hand at the memorial service. "You're so capable, just like your father." The comparison warmed me. Dad and I had shared the same methodical mind, the same appreciation for systems and order. In his absence, I took pride in becoming Mom's rock, the dependable, practical daughter who could handle life's logistical challenges. For 6 months, I adjusted my schedule to accommodate Mom's needs. I drove her to appointments, managed her medications, and spent every weekend at the family home helping with maintenance and paperwork. Ryan and Isabel helped too, of course, bringing the girls over frequently and handling grocery shopping, but the administrative burden fell naturally to me. "You're so good with all this paperwork stuff," Ryan said one Sunday, watching me organize Dad's files. "I get a headache just looking at it." "Someone has to do it," I replied, not unkindly. This was my contribution, not as visible as grandchildren perhaps, but equally valuable. Then Mom was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The disease moved with brutal efficiency. Within 8 weeks, she too was gone, passing peacefully in her sleep with Ryan and me holding her hands. The double loss left us both reeling, orphaned in our 30s with the family home suddenly empty of the people who had filled it with life for over 4 decades. "What happens now?" Ryan asked the day after Mom's funeral, as we sat in the silent kitchen where we'd eaten countless family meals. "We need to contact Philip Harrison," I said, referring to our parents' longtime attorney. "He'll have their will and instructions." The meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. I spent the intervening days methodically organizing documents, creating spreadsheets of assets, and preparing questions. This was how I processed grief, through order and action, the same approach I'd observed in my father throughout my life. Ryan arrived at Philip's office 15 minutes late, apologizing and explaining that Morgan had been reluctant to go to school. I had been there 30 minutes early, reviewing my notes. Isabel joined us, her presence a quiet support for Ryan. Philip's office was exactly what you'd expect from a man who had practiced law for 40 years. Wood-paneled walls, leather-bound books, and a desk that had probably witnessed thousands of life-changing conversations. He greeted us with somber professionalism, offering condolences before getting to business. "Your parents updated their will 2 years ago," he explained, placing a document on the desk. "They were very clear about their wishes." I nodded, ready for the details of what I assumed would be a straightforward division of assets. The family home would likely need to be sold, with proceeds split between Ryan and me. The investment portfolio my mother had managed would require careful liquidation. Dad's insurance business had already been sold to his junior partner upon his death, with the proceeds added to the estate. "The will is actually quite simple," Philip continued. "Eleanor and William Bennett leave their entire estate, including the family home, all financial assets, and personal property, to their son, Ryan Bennett." The words didn't register immediately. I looked at Philip, waiting for him to continue with my portion. "And?" I prompted when he remained silent. "That's the entirety of the bequest, Ms. Bennett. The will specifies that all assets go to Ryan." I felt as though the floor had disappeared beneath me. "There must be a mistake. I'm their daughter." Philip's expression was sympathetic but firm. "There's no mistake. Your parents made this decision consciously. They included a personal letter explaining their reasoning." He handed me an envelope with my name written in my mother's elegant script. My hands trembled as I opened it, aware of Ryan and Isabel's stunned silence beside me. "Dearest Charlotte, if you're reading this, both your father and I have passed on. Please know that this decision was made with great deliberation and love. Ryan has always struggled to find his footing financially, while you have excelled. You've built a stable career and managed your finances wisely, just as we taught you. We are so proud of your independence and capability. Ryan, however, has Morgan and Lily to consider. As grandparents, we feel a responsibility to ensure their future is secure. With your professional success and without children of your own, we believe you will understand our decision to leave the estate to Ryan. knowing that he will use these resources to provide stability for his family. We love you dearly and know that you will continue to thrive through your own merits, as you always have. With all our love, Mom and Dad. The letter blurred as tears filled my eyes. I had been disinherited not despite my responsible choices, but because of them. My independence, my career focus, my childlessness, all reasons why my parents had decided I deserved nothing of their legacy. Charlotte, I had no idea, Ryan said, his voice strained. I swear I didn't know about this. I couldn't look at him. My brother, who had received endless second chances, financial support, and now the entirety of our parents' substantial estate, simply because he had reproduced. The estate is valued at approximately $4 million, Philip continued, his professional tone a stark contrast to the emotional devastation I felt. This includes the family home valued at $850,000, investment accounts totaling $1 million retirement accounts of $340,000, and personal property valued at approximately $110,000. Each figure felt like another blow. 20 years of dutiful daughterhood, of Sunday calls and dependable support, erased by a decision that essentially stated, your life choices make you less deserving than your brother. Is this even legal? I asked, finally finding my voice. Entirely legal, Philip confirmed. Parents have complete testamentary freedom to distribute their assets as they see fit, barring certain exceptions that don't apply here. I stood up abruptly, needing to escape the suffocating confines of the office. I need some air. Outside, the spring sunshine seemed obscenely cheerful. I gulped oxygen, trying to process what had just happened. All those years of being the responsible one, the reliable daughter, the capable problem solver. And this was my reward. Absolute disinheritance in favor of my younger brother, simply because he had fulfilled the biological imperative that I had postponed in favor of building. Financial security. Ryan found me sitting on a bench across from the office building. Charlotte, we need to talk about this, he said, hesitantly sitting beside me. I'm as shocked as you are. I doubt that, I replied, my voice hollow. Look, I don't feel right about this. We can figure something out, split things more fairly. His offer should have been comforting, but it only heightened my humiliation. Now I would be dependent on my brother's generosity, receiving a portion of what should have rightfully been half mine to begin with. I need time, I said, standing up. Please don't contact me for a while. The next few weeks passed in a blur of grief, not just for my parents now, but for my understanding of our family. I had always believed that being responsible and independent was valued, that building a successful career was something my parents respected. Now I questioned everything. Had they secretly resented my choice not to have children? Had they seen my focus on career advancement as selfishness rather than ambition? The foundations of my identity felt suddenly unstable, built on assumptions that had been proven devastatingly false. I threw myself into work, volunteering for extra projects, and staying late at the office. Colleagues commented on my dedication, unaware that I was simply avoiding an empty townhouse filled with unanswerable questions. Ryan called repeatedly. I let his messages accumulate on my voicemail. Charlotte, please call me back. We need to discuss the estate. Charlotte, Isabel and I want to make this right. Charlotte, the girls are asking about you. After 3 weeks of silence, he showed up at my door on a Sunday evening, the time I would normally have called our parents. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. You can't avoid me forever, he said when I reluctantly let him in. We're the only family we have left. He looked terrible, eyes shadowed, clothes rumpled, none of his usual easy charm evident. "I told Philip I want to contest the will," he said without preamble. "Split everything 50-50, the way it should be." His words should have brought relief, but instead sparked anger. "So now you get to be the magnanimous brother?" Graciously, giving me what should have been mine by right. "That's not fair, Charlotte. I'm trying to fix this." "You can't fix this." The emotions I'd been suppressing erupted. Our parents believed I deserved nothing of their legacy because I chose career over children. No gesture from you can change that fundamental betrayal. Ryan flinched as though I'd struck him. "They loved you. They loved what I could do. For them. The capable daughter who handled the paperwork and organized the funeral and managed their affairs. But when it came to acknowledging my place in the family, I was expendable." We argued for hours, circling through hurt and anger and grief without resolution. Eventually, exhausted, we reached an uneasy truce. Ryan would maintain the family home temporarily, while we both took time to process our loss before making permanent decisions about the estate. As he was leaving, he paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I've always admired you, Charlotte. Your certainty, your competence. I've spent my life feeling like I was playing catch-up to you." His words stayed with me long after he left, a complexity I wasn't ready to examine. 2 days later, Philip Harrison called me at work. "Ms. Bennett, could you come to my office this afternoon? Something has come to my attention regarding your parents' estate." "I'm not interested in watching you transfer everything to Ryan," I replied coldly. "That's just it," Philip said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've discovered an irregularity that you should be aware of. I can't discuss it over the phone." Curiosity overcame my reluctance. 3 hours later, I again sat in Philip's wood-paneled office, this time alone. "After our meeting, I felt troubled," he explained, looking uncomfortable. "Your parents were always fair-minded people. The will seemed uncharacteristically one-sided." I remained silent, unwilling to show how deeply his words resonated with my own confusion. I reviewed all their legal documents, including files from before I became their attorney. That's when I found it. He slid a document across the desk, a will dated 15 years earlier. "This was never formally revoked." I skimmed the document, my heart racing as I realized what I was seeing. This earlier will divided the estate equally between Ryan and me, with specific bequests to each of us that reflected our individual relationships with our parents. "What does this mean legally?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "It creates a significant complication. For a new will to supersede an existing one, the previous will must be explicitly revoked. This wasn't done, which raises questions about which document represents their final intentions." "But the newer will was drawn up by another attorney, Gerald Winters, 2 years ago," Philip interrupted. "Your parents came to me afterward to execute some trusts, but never mentioned the new will. I only became aware of it when Winters contacted me after your mother's passing. Something about the situation felt wrong. My parents had worked with Philip for decades. Why would they suddenly use another attorney for something as significant as their will?" "Can you tell me anything about this Gerald Winters?" Philip's expression tightened. "He's had some ethical complaints over the years. Nothing proven, but enough to raise concerns in legal circles." "And you think—" "I think it warrants investigation," Philip said carefully. "The abrupt change in estate distribution, the use of an attorney with a questionable reputation, the failure to properly revoke the previous will, these factors together suggest possible undue influence. The implication hung in the air between us. Could someone have manipulated my parents into changing their will? The thought was simultaneously disturbing and vindicating. Disturbing because it suggested vulnerability in the people I had always seen as pillars of strength, vindicating because it offered an alternative to the painful conclusion that they had deliberately excluded me. "What happens now?" I asked, trying to process this new information. "With your permission, I'd like to formally challenge the recent will on grounds of potential undue influence and procedural irregularity. It would mean a more thorough investigation into the circumstances surrounding its creation." I thought about the family home where I'd grown up, the investments my mother had carefully managed for decades, the personal belongings imbued with memories. But more than the material assets, I thought about what the will represented, my parents' final statement about my place in the family. "Yes," I said finally. "I want to know the truth." Philip nodded, making a note. "There's something else you should know. Yesterday, I received an anonymous envelope containing bank statements showing unusual transfers from your parents' accounts to Isabel's interior design business over the past 3 years. Large consulting, fees for unspecified services." The implication was like a physical blow. Isabel, Ryan's wife, mother of my nieces, the woman my parents had welcomed with open arms, potentially involved in manipulating them? "Does Ryan know about any of this?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "I contacted him this morning about the discovery of the earlier will. He seemed genuinely surprised and concerned. I haven't mentioned the financial transfers yet." As I left Philip's office, my mind churned with questions and possibilities. The comfortable assumptions that had structured my understanding of my family had been shattered, first by the will and now by these new revelations. Everything I thought I knew felt suddenly uncertain. Standing on the sidewalk outside, I made a decision. The responsible, predictable Charlotte would have returned to work, compartmentalizing these personal issues until after hours. Instead, I called my boss and requested an emergency personal leave. Then I drove to the family home, the home that according to one will belonged entirely to Ryan, and according to another was half mine. Ryan's car was in the driveway, but Isabel's was noticeably absent. He opened the door before I could knock, his expression a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Charlotte, I'm glad you're here. Philip called me about the old will. I had no idea." "Where's Isabel?" I interrupted. His expression shifted subtly. "She took the girls to her mother's for a few days. We needed some space after I confronted her about some financial issues I discovered. So he knew, or suspected." "We need to talk," I said, stepping past him into the house where we'd grown up. The house that now stood at the center of questions I had never imagined needing to ask. The family portrait on the entryway wall caught my eye. Mom, Dad, Ryan, Isabel, the girls and me, arranged in impeccable harmony. A perfect family image that, like so many things in life, told only part of the story. As I turned to face my brother in our parents' kitchen, I realized we were standing at the threshold of difficult truths and painful discoveries. Whatever came next would forever change our understanding of our family, our parents, and ourselves. But for the first time since learning about the will, I felt something beyond hurt and betrayal. I felt a fierce determination to uncover the truth, not just for the sake of material inheritance, but for the deeper legacy of understanding who my parents really were and what they truly intended for their children. The comfortable assumptions of my life had been shattered, but in their place grew something unexpected. The first fragile shoots of authentic self-determination, unrooted from others' expectations and judgments. I didn't know where this path would lead, but I knew with sudden clarity that I needed to follow it, wherever it might take me. The Bennett family kitchen had always been the heart of the home, where holiday meals were prepared, where homework was completed at the large oak table, where critical family discussions took place. Now, standing across from Ryan in this familiar space felt both comforting and disorienting, like returning to a childhood bedroom only to find the furniture rearranged. "I need you to tell me everything," I said, settling into one of the worn kitchen chairs. "From the beginning." Ryan ran his hands through his disheveled hair, looking suddenly older than his 35 years. I honestly don't know where the beginning is anymore, Charlotte. I thought I understood our family, our marriage, our life. Now I'm questioning everything. Start with the will. When did you first learn about it? At the meeting with Philip, just like you. I swear to God, Charlotte, I had no idea Mom and Dad had changed their will to leave everything to me. He slumped into the chair opposite mine. It didn't make sense to me either. They always treated us equally growing up. I studied my brother's face, searching for signs of deception. We'd grown up together, shared the same parents, the same upbringing, yet our adult lives had diverged so dramatically that at times he felt like a stranger. Still, I knew Ryan's tells. The way he couldn't maintain eye contact when lying, the nervous tap of his fingers against his thigh. I saw neither now, just exhaustion and genuine distress. And Isabel? What did she know? A flash of pain crossed his features. That's what I've been trying to figure out since yesterday. After Philip called about the earlier will, I started looking more closely at our finances. There were transfers from Isabel's business account that I couldn't explain. Large deposits. That didn't match any of her client contracts. The consulting fees, I murmured. Ryan's head snapped up. You know about those? Philip mentioned unusual transfers to Isabel's business. He received bank statements anonymously. I confronted her last night, Ryan continued, his voice hollow. She claimed they were legitimate consulting fees for helping Mom reorganize their investment properties after Dad died. Said Mom insisted on paying her professional rates rather than accepting family help. The explanation sounded plausible on the surface. Isabel was indeed an interior designer with experience in property staging and renovation. Our mother had always been insistent about paying fair value for professional services, even from family. And you don't believe her? Ryan's hesitation spoke volumes. I want to. But the timing of the payments, the amounts, they align perfectly with when Mom and Dad changed their will. And when I asked to see the consulting contract or project plans, she got defensive, said she was hurt that I didn't trust her. Classic. Deflection, I noted, the analyst in me automatically categorizing the behavior pattern. Maybe. Or maybe I'm being paranoid, seeing connections that aren't there because I'm grieving and confused. Ryan looked up, his eyes meeting mine directly. Charlotte, what if this tears apart what family we have left? The girls adore you. Whatever happens with Isabel and me, I don't want them to lose their aunt too. His concern for his daughters, relationship with me, even amid his personal crisis, touched something deep within me. Despite our differences, despite the hurt and betrayal of recent weeks, Ryan was still the brother who had taught me to ride a bike, who had defended me against middle school bullies, who had danced awkwardly but enthusiastically at my college graduation party. The girls won't lose me, I promised softly. But we need to understand what really happened with Mom and Dad's will. Not just for the inheritance, but because these were their final wishes. We owe it to them to make sure those wishes weren't manipulated. Ryan nodded, visibly relieved at my reassurance about his daughters. Where do we start? With this Gerald Winters, the attorney who drafted the new will. We spent the next several hours meticulously going through our parents' home office, searching for any documentation related to the revised will. The room itself was a time capsule of their lives. Dad's collection of fountain pens arranged precisely on the desk, Mom's gardening reference book stacked on the window seat, family photos chronicling decades of birthdays and graduations. In the bottom drawer of Dad's filing cabinet, beneath folders of household expenses and warranty information, Ryan discovered a business card for Gerald Winters, attorney at law. The office address was in Lakeside, a neighboring town about 30 minutes away. Why would they go to Lakeside for legal help when Philip's office is 5 minutes from here? I wondered aloud. Maybe they didn't want him to know about the changes they were making, Ryan suggested. Or maybe they didn't go to Winters at all, I countered. Maybe someone brought him to them. The implication hung in the air between us. If our parents had been manipulated into changing their will, who stood to benefit? The obvious answer was Ryan, as the sole beneficiary. But his genuine shock and willingness to contest the will argued against his involvement. Isabel, however, would benefit indirectly through her husband's inheritance, while maintaining plausible deniability. Further searching yielded no additional information about Gerald Winters or the circumstances surrounding the new will. As evening approached, Ryan ordered pizza, a childhood tradition whenever our parents had been away and we'd been left to fend for ourselves. The familiar routine brought an unexpected lump to my throat. Remember how Mom would always leave casseroles in the freezer when they traveled? I asked, accepting a slice. As if we couldn't survive on pizza and cereal for a weekend. Ryan smiled slightly. And how Dad would call every night at exactly 8:30 to check in, no matter what time zone they were in. They were good parents, I said quietly. Imperfect, but good. Which is why none of this makes sense. Ryan set down his pizza, appetite apparently gone. They wouldn't have disinherited you, Charlotte. Not without a reason that made sense. To them. They were fair people. His certainty was somehow more comforting than any platitude could have been. Whatever had happened with the will, Ryan believed as strongly as I did that it didn't reflect our parents' true intentions. We need to visit Gerald Winters, I decided. First thing tomorrow. Ryan nodded in agreement. Together. That single word, together, shifted something subtle but significant between us. For weeks, I had been processing my grief and sense of betrayal in isolation, seeing Ryan as either complicit or unfairly advantaged. Now, we were allies in a shared quest for truth. We stayed up late, reminiscing about our parents, speculating about what might have happened, strategizing our approach to Gerald Winters. When exhaustion finally overtook us, I settled into my childhood bedroom, where the NASA posters I'd hung as a teenage astronomy enthusiast still adorned the walls. Morning arrived with unexpected clarity. After weeks of emotional fog, I felt purposeful, focused. We ate a quick breakfast and drove to Lakeside in my car, arriving at the address on Dr. Gerald Winters' business card shortly after 9. The office turned out to be a small storefront wedged between a vape shop and a discount furniture outlet in a tired-looking strip mall. The faded sign read, Winters Legal Services, with wills, trusts, divorces, listed beneath in smaller letters. The contrast with Philip Harrison's prestigious downtown office could not have been more stark. This doesn't look like Mom and Dad's style at all, Ryan murmured as we approached the entrance. The interior matched the exterior's shabby impression. Laminate furniture, fluorescent lighting, and a receptionist's desk occupied by a young woman, more focused on her phone than on potential clients. We're here to see Gerald Winters, I announced, using my professional voice, the one that commanded attention in corporate boardrooms. The receptionist looked up reluctantly. Do you have an appointment? No, but it concerns the Bennett estate. I believe Mr. Winters will want to speak with us. At the mention of the Bennett name, her expression shifted subtly. A flicker of recognition, perhaps even discomfort. I'll see if he's available, she said, disappearing through a door behind her desk. Several minutes passed before a heavy-set man in his 60s emerged. Gerald Winters wore an ill-fitting suit and a too-wide tie, his demeanor an unsuccessful attempt at professional gravitas. Mr. and Ms. Bennett, I presume? He said, extending a damp hand that I shook briefly. I was expecting to hear from you. Eventually. Please come into my office. His small office was cluttered with stacked files and law books that appeared more decorative than functional. A framed law degree from a school I'd never heard of hung crookedly on the wall behind his. How can I help you today? He asked once we were seated. We'd like to understand the circumstances surrounding our parents' decision to revise their will 2 years ago, I said directly. Specifically, why they chose to work with you rather than their longtime attorney, and what discussions occurred regarding the significant changes to their estate distribution. Winters leaned back in his chair, affecting a casualness that didn't quite reach his eyes. Your parents came to me on recommendation from a mutual acquaintance. They were quite clear about their wishes to leave their estate to their son and grandchildren. Which mutual acquaintance? Ryan asked sharply. Client confidentiality prevents me from— Our parents are deceased, I interrupted. The standard protections of attorney-client privilege are significantly modified after death, particularly when there are questions about the validity of the will itself. It was a calculated bluff. My knowledge of legal precedent came more from television dramas than actual expertise, but Winter's momentary hesitation suggested it had hit its mark. I believe it was a family friend, he said finally. A Mrs. Cavendish, if I recall correctly. Ryan and I exchanged glances. Margaret. Cavendish was our mother's longtime bridge partner and social committee co-chair. She was also Isabel's maternal aunt. And our parents came to you directly? Ryan pressed. We had an initial consultation here, yes. Subsequent meetings took place at their home due to Mr. Bennett's health concerns after his stroke. Another piece clicked into place. Dad's mobility had been severely limited after his stroke. He would have needed assistance to visit an attorney's office, especially one 30 minutes away. Who was present during these meetings? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral despite the growing suspicion taking shape. Winters shifted uncomfortably. Your parents, of course, and occasionally your sister-in-law, who seemed to be assisting with their affairs. Isabel, present during will consultations with an attorney chosen through her family connection. The circumstantial evidence was mounting, but still not definitive. Mr. Winters, I said carefully, are you aware that our parents had an existing will that was never properly revoked? That the document you drafted may not be legally valid? His expression flickered, surprise quickly masked by professional concern. I was assured that all previous estate documents had been addressed appropriately. Assured by whom? Ryan asked. By Mrs. Bennett, your mother. In my father's presence? Winters hesitated. I don't recall specifically. Let me be very clear, I said, leaning forward. Philip Harrison, our parents' longtime attorney, has identified significant procedural irregularities in this will. We are prepared to challenge it on grounds of undue influence and formal deficiencies. The question is whether you want to be investigated alongside it. It was another bluff, more aggressive than the first. Winter's reaction would tell us much about his involvement, whether he was a knowing participant in manipulation or merely careless in his professional duties. His face paled visibly. I followed standard procedures for will execution. If there were other factors at play, I was unaware of them. What other factors might those be? Ryan asked quietly. Winters wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. Look, I'm a small-town attorney. I handle straightforward legal matters for people who can't afford the big firms downtown. Your parents' will seemed unusual in its distribution. Yes, but people make unusual decisions about their estates all the time. Did my father participate actively in these discussions? I pressed. Did he speak? Ask questions? Or was he merely present while others made decisions? He was quiet, Winters admitted. Your mother explained that the stroke had affected his speech. She indicated that they had discussed their wishes thoroughly, and she was expressing their joint decisions. Ryan and I exchanged glances. Dad's stroke had caused some speech difficulties, but he had been fully capable of expressing himself, especially on important matters. If he had been silent during critical estate planning discussions, something was deeply wrong. One final question, I said. Did Isabel Bennett ever speak with you privately, without our parents present? Winter's hesitation was answer enough. I see, I said, standing. Thank you for your time, Mr. Winters. Our attorney will be in touch. Outside in the parking lot, Ryan leaned against my car, face ashen. Charlotte, what have we uncovered here? I'm not sure yet, I replied honestly. But it appears Isabel may have orchestrated this entire situation, finding a pliable attorney through family connections, manipulating Mom after Dad's stroke, possibly even influencing Dad's apparent passivity during the meetings. But why? We're not talking about millions. The house, the investments, it's comfortable, but not life-changing wealth. For you, maybe. You've had multiple business ventures funded by Mom and Dad. For Isabel, who grew up in much more modest circumstances, too. $4 million probably looks like significant money. Ryan's expression crumpled. I can't believe she would do this. We've been married for 9 years. I thought I knew her. In that moment, my brother looked as lost as I had felt when first hearing about the will. His entire understanding of his marriage, of the mother of his children, was being fundamentally questioned. Despite my own pain, I felt a surge of protective instinct. We don't have definitive proof yet, I cautioned. Let's speak with Margaret Cavendish before jumping to conclusions. Finding Margaret proved simple enough. Wednesday was her standing hair appointment at Elegance Salon, a ritual so consistent that our mother had joked about setting her watch by Margaret's weekly blowout. We arrived just as she was settling into the stylist's chair, her expression registering surprise and then calculation at our appearance. Charlotte! Ryan! What a lovely surprise! She exclaimed with brittle brightness. I've been meaning to call you both about the garden club's memorial planting for Eleanor. We're thinking of a rose garden near the community center. That sounds lovely, Margaret, I said smoothly. But we're actually here about Gerald Winters. You recommended him to our parents? Her hands fluttered nervously to her immaculate silver hair. Did I? It's been such a difficult time. I hardly remember such details. He specifically mentioned you as the connection, Ryan pressed. Said you were a mutual acquaintance who referred our parents to him. Margaret's eyes darted between us, her composure visibly cracking. Well, yes, I suppose I might have mentioned him. Isabel asked if I knew an estate attorney, and Gerald had helped my sister with her will last year. Isabel asked you for an attorney recommendation? I repeated, wanting absolute clarity. Not our parents? Well, she said Eleanor was asking. After William's stroke, Eleanor relied on Isabel for so many things. Such a godsend, that girl. Always helping with appointments and arrangements. Each word felt like another piece locking into a disturbing puzzle. Isabel had positioned herself as indispensable to our mother after Dad's stroke, then leveraged that trust to orchestrate a complete revision of their estate plans, effectively cutting me out entirely. Thank you, Margaret, I said, my voice steady despite my internal turmoil. You've been very helpful. Back in the car, Ryan sat in stunned silence, staring out the window at the town that had shaped our childhood. The library where we'd spent summer afternoons, the ice cream shop. That had been our Friday treat, the park where Dad had taught us both to throw a perfect spiral. I confronted her about the money, he said finally. Not the will, just the consulting fees. She packed a bag and took the girls to her mother's. Said she needed space from my accusations. Ryan, 9 years of marriage, 2 children. I thought we were building something real. His voice cracked. Was it all manipulation? From the beginning? I had no answer for him. The depth of Isabel's apparent deception, if our suspicions proved correct, went beyond financial opportunism into something much darker. The systematic exploitation of our parents' vulnerability. After Dad's stroke, The deliberate exclusion of me from my rightful inheritance. The calculated performance of devoted daughter-in-law while orchestrating the redistribution of family assets. "What do we do now?" Ryan asked, sounding lost. The question hung between us as we drove back to the family home. What was the appropriate response to such a profound betrayal? Legal action seemed insufficient to address the emotional dimensions of what had occurred. Yet doing nothing would mean accepting a fundamental injustice, not just to me, but to our parents, whose final wishes had apparently been manipulated. As we pulled into the driveway, I noticed a familiar car parked along the street. Philip. Harrison's sedan. The attorney was waiting on the front porch, his expression grave. "I've been trying to reach you both," he said as we approached. "There's been a significant development." Inside, Philip laid a folder on the kitchen table. "After our conversation yesterday, Charlotte, I did some further investigation into Gerald Winters. He has a history of disciplinary actions by the State Bar Association, mostly related to improper handling of estate matters. That's hardly surprising given our meeting with him," I noted. "What's more relevant is this," Philip continued, opening the folder to reveal a document. "It's an affidavit from your mother's home health aide, Teresa Jimenez. She was present during several meetings between your mother and Gerald Winters. Meetings she says made her uncomfortable enough that she documented her concerns." Ryan leaned forward. "What concerns specifically?" "According to Ms. Jimenez, your mother often appeared confused during these meetings. She repeatedly asked why you weren't there, Charlotte, and seemed surprised when reminded that you wouldn't be inheriting. Under the new arrangement, Winters and Isabel apparently explained that this had been discussed previously and was William's wish." My throat tightened. Mom was confused? Are we talking about dementia? Ms. Jimenez isn't qualified to make that diagnosis, but she notes several instances where Eleanor couldn't remember recent conversations or seemed disoriented about the time of day. She also states that Isabel discouraged medical follow-up when these episodes were mentioned, suggesting it was normal grief and stress. The implications were staggering. Not just manipulation, but potential exploitation of cognitive impairment, taking advantage of our mother's vulnerability after losing her husband of 5 decades. "Why didn't Teresa come forward earlier?" Ryan asked, his voice hoarse. "She says she raised concerns with Isabel, who assured her everything was being handled appropriately and reminded her of confidentiality obligations. After your mother's passing, she felt ethically conflicted but uncertain about her responsibilities. It was only when she heard rumors about disputes over the will that she contacted my office. I tried to process this new information, this additional layer of betrayal. My mother, brilliant, meticulous Eleanor Bennett, who had managed multiple investment properties and balanced complex financial portfolios, reduced to confusion and manipulation in her final months. The thought was almost physically painful. With this affidavit, Philip continued, we have grounds not just to contest the will, but potentially to pursue criminal charges for elder financial abuse. However, I wanted to discuss this with you both before proceeding. Legal action of this nature would have significant implications for your family, especially given Isabel's role as mother to your nieces, Ryan. Ryan stood abruptly, walking to the kitchen window that overlooked the backyard where we had played as children. She used my mother's grief and confusion to steal Charlotte's inheritance, he said flatly. She lied to my face about the consulting fees. She orchestrated this entire situation, probably counting on family loyalty to prevent us from looking too closely. He turned back to face us, his expression resolute despite the pain evident in his eyes. If we let this stand, what message does that send to Morgan and Lily about integrity? About justice? About family? I won't protect Isabel from the consequences of her actions, even if it means difficult conversations with our daughters. His conviction moved me deeply. Despite everything, his marriage, his children, the profound disruption to his life that would come from pursuing this, Ryan was choosing truth and fairness. In that moment, I recognized the values our parents had instilled in both of us, values that transcended material inheritance. "What's the next step?" I asked Philip. "I'll file a formal challenge to the newer will, submitting both Teresa's affidavit and documentation of the procedural irregularities. I'll also send formal notification to Gerald Winters regarding potential ethics violations. The district attorney's office will need to determine whether criminal charges are warranted." As Philip outlined the legal proceedings ahead, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The past weeks had been a whirlwind of shock, grief, betrayal, and confusion. Now, with a clearer understanding of what had actually occurred, I could begin to separate my parents' true intentions from the manipulation that had corrupted their final wishes. After Philip left, Ryan and I sat in silence for several minutes, absorbing the magnitude of what we'd discovered and the difficult path ahead. "I keep thinking about what Mom would say if she were here," Ryan said finally. "She valued honesty above almost everything else. Remember how she could always tell when we were lying as kids? She'd get that look, not angry, just disappointed." Ryan smiled faintly. "She'd say, 'I'm not upset about the mistake. I'm upset that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth.' She deserved better than this," I said quietly. They both did. "So did you, Charlotte." Ryan met my gaze. "Shrekley, I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening. I should have questioned why they would suddenly change their will so dramatically." His apology, unexpected and sincere, released something tight and painful in my chest. For weeks, I had carried not just grief for my parents, but a deeper wound, the belief that they had deemed me less worthy of their legacy because of my life choices. Understanding that their apparent rejection had been manufactured through manipulation didn't erase the pain entirely, but it transformed it into something navigable, something I could move through rather than being trapped within. "We can't change what happened," I said, "but we can ensure their true wishes are honored, not just for the inheritance, but for the principles they lived by." As evening fell, Ryan received a text from Isabel asking when he was coming to talk things through. His response was brief. "I know about the will, the lawyer, and Mom's confusion. We'll be communicating through attorneys from now on." He showed me the message before sending it, his hand trembling slightly. "I never thought my marriage would end like this. I'm so sorry, Ryan." The words felt inadequate against the magnitude of his loss. "The strange thing is," he said, setting down his phone, "I feel more clarity now than I have in years, like I've been viewing my life through a slightly dirty window, and someone finally cleaned the glass." His metaphor resonated with my own experience, the disorienting sense that fundamental assumptions about my family had been false, and that seeing the truth, however painful, brought its own kind of liberation. We spent that night in our childhood, home, the home that had been the setting for countless family dinners, holiday celebrations, homework sessions, and ordinary Tuesday evenings. The space felt different now, charged with both memory and possibility. Whatever happened with the legal proceedings, whatever the ultimate disposition of the estate, Ryan and I had rediscovered something essential about our relationship as siblings, and about the values our parents had truly embodied. In the morning, I would return to my townhouse and my temporarily suspended career. Ryan would face the painful process of explaining to his daughters why their mother wouldn't be coming home. We would both navigate the complex legal mechanisms designed to address the kind of exploitation we had uncovered. But for that evening, sitting together in the kitchen where our parents had taught us both to bake cookies and balance checkbooks, we found an unexpected moment of peace, not despite the difficult truths we had confronted, but because of them. The path forward would not be easy, but it would be grounded in reality rather than illusion, in justice rather than manipulation. And in that, I found the first glimmer of what might eventually become healing. The next morning, I woke in my childhood bedroom to the sound of rain against the window. a gentle, persistent rhythm that had always brought me comfort. For a moment, I felt transported back in time, a teenager with college applications spread across my desk, my future a canvas of unlimited possibilities. Then reality rushed back, and with it the weight of all we had discovered. In the kitchen, I found Ryan already awake, nursing a cup of coffee and staring at his phone with red-rimmed eyes. Morgan called from her grandmother's, he said without looking up. She wanted to know when they're coming home. What am I supposed to tell my 8-year-old daughter? That her mother manipulated her grandparents and stole her aunt's inheritance? I sat across from him, pouring myself coffee from the carafe. You tell her that you and Mommy are working through some grown-up problems, and that both of you love her and Lily more than anything in the world. The rest can wait until you have more clarity yourself. Ryan nodded slowly, setting down his phone. I never thought I'd be grateful that you stayed single and career-focused, but I am now. At least one of us avoided making catastrophically bad judgment calls in our personal life. His words, though meant as a compliment, struck an unexpected nerve. Even now, in the midst of discovering Isabel's manipulation of our parents, the narrative persisted. That my life choices represented some kind of deficiency or avoidance rather than valid decisions in their own right. I didn't stay single, Ryan, I said more sharply than intended. I chose relationships that prioritized my independence and career growth, and I didn't avoid marriage and children. I made different choices that aligned with my values and goals. Ryan looked startled. I didn't mean... I know you didn't. I softened my tone. But even now, with everything we've learned, there's this subtle suggestion that my life is somehow incomplete because it doesn't include a husband and children. It's the same assumption that made Mom and Dad's manipulated will seem plausible to begin with. The idea that without progeny, I somehow mattered less as a daughter. Ryan was quiet for a moment, absorbing my words. You're right, he said. Finally. I'm sorry. For what it's worth, I've always admired your clarity about what you want and don't want. It's a kind of courage I've never quite managed. His apology felt like another small shift in our relationship, an acknowledgement of perspectives previously unexamined. Before I could respond, my phone rang with Philip Harrison's number. I've filed the formal challenge to the newer will, Philip informed me after exchanging brief greetings. We also have another development. Teresa Jimenez has provided additional documentation, a journal she kept during her time caring for your mother, with specific dates and observations. That seems unusually thorough for a home health aide, I noted. Teresa was also a nursing student, Philip explained. She says it was habitual for her to document patient conditions. The journal includes references to several occasions when your mother expressed confusion about the estate arrangements, specifically asking why you wouldn't be receiving your fair share. My throat tightened at the image of my mother, confused and manipulated in her final months, yet still concerned about fairness to me. This strengthens our case? Substantially. I've also scheduled a meeting with Gerald Winters and his attorney for tomorrow afternoon. Given the mounting evidence, I suspect they'll be motivated to cooperate rather than face potential disciplinary action from the Bar Association. After hanging up, I relayed the conversation to Ryan, who had begun washing breakfast dishes in an apparent effort to maintain normalcy amid chaos. What about Isabel? He asked, scrubbing a mug with unnecessary vigor. If Winters cooperates, will she face legal consequences? The question hung between us, heavy with implications. Criminal charges against Isabel would irrevocably alter his daughter's lives, creating a narrative of maternal betrayal they would carry forever. Yet failing to hold her accountable would send its own damaging message. That's ultimately your decision, I said carefully. As the children's father, you need to consider what serves their best interests long-term. Ryan set down the mug, bracing his hands against the sink's edge. Their best interests include understanding that actions have consequences, he said, more to himself than to me. That integrity and honesty matter, especially within family. His phone chimed with an incoming message. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. Isabel wants to meet. Says we need to clear the air about misunderstandings regarding the estate. Will you go? Not alone, he decided. I want witnesses to whatever she claims. Would you come with me? The request surprised me. Throughout our adult lives, Ryan had maintained clear boundaries between his married life and his relationship with me. Isabel had subtly discouraged close sibling interaction, positioning herself as the primary family connector. Now, Ryan was explicitly choosing transparency and solidarity over the privacy that had characterized his marriage. Of course, I agreed. When and where? The Riverside Cafe in an hour, he replied, reading from his phone. Public enough that she won't make a scene, private enough for a real conversation. The Riverside Cafe had been our parents' favorite date night location, a small, elegant restaurant overlooking the town's namesake river. The choice felt deliberate on Isabel's part, invoking family nostalgia to soften whatever manipulations she planned. We arrived early, securing a corner table that offered both privacy and a clear view of the entrance. Ryan sat facing the door, a decision I recognized as strategic. He wanted to see Isabel's approach, to observe her before she noticed us. When she entered, I was struck by how composed she appeared. Designer sundress perfectly pressed, blonde hair arranged in casual elegance, makeup flawless despite what should have been days of emotional turmoil. She spotted us immediately, her practiced smile faltering slightly at my presence before reasserting itself. "Ryan, darling," she greeted, leaning down to kiss his cheek. He turned his face slightly, causing her lips to brush his jaw instead. If she noticed the rejection, she didn't acknowledge it. "Charlotte, I didn't expect you to join us. This is really a conversation between husband and wife." "It's a conversation about our parents' estate," I corrected calmly. "As their daughter and a wrongfully disinherited beneficiary, I have every right to be here." Isabel's smile remained fixed as she took the seat across from us. "There seems to be some confusion about Eleanor and William's intentions. I was hoping we could clear that up without involving attorneys or creating unnecessary family drama." "The confusion," Ryan said quietly, "is why our mother would suddenly disinherit her daughter after a lifetime of equal treatment, using an attorney with multiple disciplinary actions rather than their trusted family lawyer, all while exhibiting signs of cognitive impairment documented by her home health aide." Isabel's composure slipped momentarily, her eyes widening before she recalibrated. Teresa had no medical training. Her observations were unprofessional and incomplete. "She was a nursing student," I countered, "with specific training in recognizing cognitive decline. And she kept a contemporaneous journal documenting her concerns you dismissed when she raised them directly with you." For the first time, Isabel seemed genuinely unsettled. I was looking after Eleanor's dignity. She wouldn't have wanted people questioning her mental capacity over occasional senior moments. Senior moments? Ryan's voice had an edge I rarely heard. Or convenient confusion you could exploit to redirect a multi-million-dollar estate. A slight flush crept up Isabel's neck. "You're being absolutely ridiculous. Eleanor and William made their decisions of sound mind and body. They simply recognized that family assets should remain with family, specifically with their son and grandchildren. I am family," I stated flatly, "their daughter for 39 years. "But not their legacy," Isabel retorted, her polished veneer cracking further. "Not their bloodline going forward. Charlotte, you chose career over family. You can't be surprised they honored the child who carried forward their values." There it was again, the insidious narrative that my life choices somehow diminished my worth as a daughter, as family. The same twisted logic that had made the manipulated will seem plausible to outsiders. "Our parents valued education, achievement, and independence," I said evenly. They encouraged me to pursue my career with the same enthusiasm they supported Ryan's entrepreneurial ventures. They never once suggested that my worth as their child was contingent on producing grandchildren. People say all sorts of supportive things to their children's faces, Isabel dismissed with a wave of her manicured hand. Their true values become clear in their final decisions. Like the decision in their original, properly executed. Will that divided their estate equally between their children? Ryan asked pointedly. The will that was never legally revoked before Gerald Winters drafted a suspicious replacement? Isabel's expression froze. What are you talking about? Philip Harrison found their previous will, I explained, watching her reaction carefully. The one that reflected their actual wishes, drafted when they were both unquestionably of sound mind and working with an attorney they trusted implicitly. That will was superseded. It was never formally revoked, Ryan interrupted. A legal requirement for a valid replacement. Something a reputable attorney would have ensured, but Gerald Winters conveniently overlooked. Isabel's confident facade crumbled entirely. She glanced around the restaurant as if seeking escape routes, then leaned forward, lowering her voice urgently. Listen to me, both of you. What happened with Eleanor and William's estate was complicated. After William's stroke, Eleanor was overwhelmed managing everything alone. She needed guidance, structure. Yes, perhaps I helped direct certain decisions, but it was always with the family's best interests at heart. The family, Ryan repeated. Or your interests? They're one and the same, Isabel insisted, reaching for his hand across the table. He withdrew it before she could make contact. Ryan, think about our girls. Everything I've done has been to secure their future, to ensure they have every advantage. Including manipulating their grandparents and stealing their aunt's inheritance? Ryan asked, his voice tight with controlled emotion. What lesson does that teach Morgan and Lily about integrity, about family loyalty? Isabel's expression hardened. It teaches them that a mother will do anything to protect her children's interests. That family means prioritizing the next generation, not dwelling in the past. My parents weren't the past, I said, anger finally breaking through my composed exterior. They were living, breathing people with their own wishes and autonomy. Autonomy you systematically undermined while positioning yourself as their devoted helper. You weren't there, Isabel snapped. You were busy with your important career, your independent life. I was the one driving Eleanor to doctor's appointments, helping William with physical therapy, managing their daily needs while you called dutifully once a week for your 15-minute check-in. Her accusation struck a painful chord. After Dad's stroke, I had increased my visits and calls, but I hadn't relocated or taken extended leave. I'd continued balancing career and family obligations, trusting that between Ryan, Isabel, and hired help, our parents' needs were being... I made decisions based on what everyone told me was needed, I said quietly. Including you, Isabel. You repeatedly assured me that you had everything handled, that Mom was doing well, that additional support wasn't necessary. Because I was handling it, she insisted. I stepped up when no one else would. And yes, I made sure my children's future was secured in the process. What kind of mother would I be if I didn't? Ryan shook his head slowly. I don't recognize you, he said, his voice hollow with disillusionment. The woman I married wouldn't have exploited elderly parents, vulnerability to manipulate their estate planning. She wouldn't have deliberately excluded family members from important discussions. She wouldn't have lied directly to my face when questioned about suspicious financial transfers. Isabel's eyes narrowed. The man I married wouldn't have questioned my loyalty or accused me of criminal behavior without evidence. He would have trusted me, supported me, recognized that my actions were motivated by love for our family. The evidence is substantial, I interjected. Teresa's documented observations, the irregular will execution, the consulting fees coinciding perfectly with the will changes, Gerald Winter's connection to your aunt, your presence at legal meetings, where our father was unusually silent and our mother apparently confused. Circumstantial at best, Isabel dismissed, though her tight expression belied her confident words. Winters has agreed to meet with Philip tomorrow, Ryan said. Given his history of disciplinary problems and the mounting evidence, I suspect he'll be motivated to cooperate fully rather than risk his license. The color drained from Isabel's face. You're bluffing. The meeting is scheduled for 2 p.m., I confirmed. Would you like us to have Philip reach out to your attorney? You do have one, I assume? Isabel's composure failed completely. She glanced frantically between us, apparently recognizing that her carefully constructed narrative was collapsing. When she spoke again, her voice had lost its polished confidence. What do you want from me? An apology? A confession? What will it take to resolve this without destroying our family completely? Ryan leaned forward, his gaze direct and unflinching. The truth, Isabel. The complete truth, without manipulation or evasion. Then we can discuss what happens next. For several long moments, Isabel struggled visibly with internal conflict. Finally, she seemed to deflate, her shoulders slumping in defeat. Eleanor was confused after William died, she admitted quietly. Not dementia, not officially diagnosed but disoriented. Grief and stress affected her memory, her decision-making. I did suggest Gerald Winters. He'd helped Aunt Margaret with some legal issues, and she mentioned he was more flexible than traditional attorneys. Flexible meaning willing to overlook proper procedures, I noted. Isabel didn't deny it. The consulting fees were Eleanor's idea initially. She wanted to pay me for helping with the properties. But the amounts, the timing, yes, I influenced those. And I did encourage the change to the will. I presented it as William's wish, something they had discussed before his stroke. Had they? Ryan pressed. Not explicitly, no, Isabel admitted, staring at her hands. But William had made comments about wanting to ensure the girls' education, their future. I interpreted those in a way that served my purposes. The clinical detachment of her confession was almost more disturbing than the acts themselves. No remorse colored her acknowledgement of manipulation, only regret at being discovered. And my father's silence during the meetings with Winters? I asked. He was present but passive, Isabel confirmed. The stroke had made him more acquiescent generally. He nodded along with whatever Eleanor suggested, and I leveraged that. Ryan exhaled slowly, as if releasing years of accumulated trust and belief. Why, Isabel? We weren't struggling financially. My business was finally turning a profit. We had everything we needed. Needed, yes, but not everything we deserved. Something hardened in her expression. I grew up watching my mother clean other people's houses while struggling to pay our rent. I swore my children would never know that kind of insecurity. When I saw an opportunity to guarantee their future, I took it. At the expense of your integrity, at the expense of our marriage, at the expense of Charlotte's rightful inheritance. Ryan's voice carried not anger but profound sadness. I believed you would never find out, Isabel said simply. The girls would have their education funded. We would have financial security. Charlotte would continue her successful career without needing the inheritance. Everyone would move forward without disruption. Except that our parents' actual wishes would have been disregarded, I pointed out. Their autonomy violated, their intentions manipulated. They weren't thinking clearly, Isabel insisted, a flash of her earlier defensiveness returning. Grief and age affected their judgment. I made decisions they would have made if they'd been younger, more rational. That wasn't your right, Ryan said firmly. It was their estate, their legacy to distribute according to their wishes, not yours. Isabel fell silent, apparently, recognizing the futility of further justifications. After several moments, she looked up, her expression carefully composed once more. "What happens now? Will you press charges? Have me arrested? Turn our daughters' lives upside down to punish me?" The question hung between us, heavy with implications for all our futures. Ryan and I exchanged glances, a silent communication, passing between siblings who had recently rediscovered their fundamental connection. "That depends," Ryan said finally, "on your willingness to make this right voluntarily, to acknowledge the original will as valid, to relinquish any claim to the irregular revision, to repay the consulting fees with interest." "And if I do?" Isabel asked cautiously. "Then we focus on minimizing the impact on Morgan and Lily," I said. "Whatever happens between you and Ryan, and that's not my decision to make, the girls deserve protection from unnecessary trauma." Isabel considered this, clearly calculating her options. "I would need certain guarantees: financial support during the transition, continued health insurance, primary custody of the girls." "Those are divorce negotiations," Ryan said quietly. "And they'll happen with attorneys present, not here. What we're discussing now is whether you face potential criminal charges for elder financial abuse and fraud." The stark term, elder financial abuse, seemed to finally penetrate Isabel's self-justification. Her carefully maintained appearance crumbled as the reality of her actions and their potential consequences fully registered. "I never thought of it that way," she whispered. "I told myself I was helping, protecting family interests." "You can still help protect this family," I said, surprising myself with the absence of vindictiveness in my voice. "By choosing accountability, now you spare Morgan and Lily the public spectacle of their mother facing criminal charges. You give them the chance to eventually understand this as a serious mistake rather than deliberate exploitation." Isabel looked between us, apparently recognizing the unexpected mercy being offered. "I'll cooperate," she said finally. "I'll sign whatever documents your attorney prepares acknowledging the original will. I'll repay the consulting fees. I'll try to make this right, for the girls' sake if nothing else." Ryan nodded, once his expression somber. "I'll have Philip draft the necessary acknowledgments. And Isabel—" He hesitated. "While I can't continue our marriage after this breach of trust, I will never prevent you from being the girls' mother. They need you, and I won't use this situation to turn them against you." Tears finally broke through Isabel's composed facade. "Thank you," she whispered. "They're the most important thing in my life, whatever you might think of my actions." As we left the restaurant, the weight of the conversation hung heavily between us. Ryan walked silently beside me, his shoulders curved inward as if bearing a physical burden. "Are you okay?" I asked when we reached the parking lot, knowing the question was woefully inadequate. "Not remotely," he admitted. "But I will be, eventually, and so will the girls." He turned to face me directly. "What about you? This was your inheritance. Too, your parents too." The question gave me pause. Throughout the investigation and confrontation, I had focused primarily on uncovering the truth, on rectifying the injustice. I hadn't fully processed my own emotional response to the manipulation itself, the violation of our parents' agency, the deliberate exclusion of me from my rightful place in their legacy. "I'm angry," I acknowledged. "Not about the money itself, but about what it represents. The assumption that my worth as a daughter was somehow diminished by my life choices. The exploitation of mom and dad when they were vulnerable. The years of calculated deception." Ryan nodded in understanding. "The money never mattered to you, did it?" "Not really. It was always about the recognition of your place in the family." "Yes," I said, surprised and touched by his perception. "It was about belonging, about mattering equally despite taking a different path." "You've always mattered, Charlotte," Ryan said quietly. To me, to Mom and Dad, whatever Isabel manipulated, whatever narrative she created, that fundamental truth hasn't changed. His words offered a healing I hadn't realized I needed, an affirmation of my place in our family that transcended material inheritance or traditional life paths. For the first time since learning about the will, I felt the tight knot of hurt in my chest begin to loosen. As we drove back to the family home, I found myself reflecting on the complex interplay of choices and values that had shaped all our lives. Isabel's early financial insecurity had created a desperate determination to secure abundance for her children, regardless of ethical boundaries. My parents' traditional values had made them vulnerable to manipulation that leveraged assumptions about family continuity through grandchildren. My own choices to prioritize career and independence had been both strength and vulnerability, creating financial security while potentially isolating me during critical family transitions. None of us existed in isolation. Each decision, each value system, interacted with others in ways both visible and invisible, creating the complex tapestry of family dynamics that had led to this moment of painful reckoning. At the house, Ryan received a call from Philip confirming the meeting with Gerald Winters the following day and outlining the legal documents required for Isabel's cooperative resolution. As he discussed details in Dad's office, I wandered through the familiar rooms of my childhood home, seeing them with new awareness. The formal living room where Mom had hosted her garden club meetings, insisting on proper etiquette and presentation. The den where Dad had taught us both to play chess, emphasizing strategy and patience. The kitchen where family decisions had been debated and resolved over decades of shared meals. Each space reflected values and priorities that had shaped Ryan and me in different but equally valid ways. In Mom's craft room, I discovered a project she had apparently been working on before her illness. A quilt with two distinct sections. One half featured fabrics in deep blues and greens with architectural patterns. The other incorporated bright yellows and reds with whimsical designs. Looking closer, I realized the blue-green section incorporated tiny pieces from my college graduation gown, while the yellow-red portion included fabric from Ryan's wedding tie. The unfinished quilt represented what our parents had truly valued, the unique qualities and choices of both their children, different but equally cherished, equally worthy of commemoration. Mom had been creating a tangible symbol of the balanced legacy she and Dad had always intended, even as Isabel was manipulating legal documents to undermine that very balance. I was still holding the quilt when Ryan found me. "What's that?" he asked, stepping into the sunlit room. "Mom's last project," I explained, showing him the meaningful fabric inclusions. A physical representation of what we now know was their true intention, equal recognition of both their children. Ryan touched the fabric gently, his expression softening. "She always found ways to show us we were loved, didn't she? Even when words were difficult." "Yes," I agreed. "And now we have the chance to honor that love properly, to ensure their true wishes are fulfilled." As the afternoon light filtered through the windows, casting warm patterns across the unfinished quilt, I felt a sense of purpose crystallize within me. The journey ahead would not be simple. Legal proceedings to formalize the original will, emotional healing from profound betrayal, rebuilding family relationships damaged by manipulation. But the foundation of that journey would be truth and integrity, values our parents had instilled in both Ryan and me, values that transcended material inheritance. In choosing accountability over denial, transparency over comfortable illusion, we were honoring our parents' legacy more profoundly than any distribution of assets could express. We were living the principles they had taught us, even as we navigated the painful reality that those same principles had been violated in their final months. That evening, as we shared a simple meal in the kitchen, Ryan received a text message that caused him to pause, fork mid-air. "Isabel has informed her mother of the situation," he said, reading from his phone. "She's agreed to come clean about everything. including her Aunt Margaret's role in connecting her with Winters. She's asking if she can see the girls tomorrow. What will you tell her? I asked. Ryan considered the question carefully. That she can see them with supervision, that we'll begin the process of explaining things in age-appropriate ways, that despite everything, they deserve a relationship with their mother. He set down his phone with surprising steadiness. It's what Mom and Dad would have wanted: accountability without vindictiveness, truth without destructive anger. His words captured perfectly the values that had always defined our family at its best. The values that had been temporarily obscured, but never truly erased by Isabel's manipulation. In honoring those values now, we were reclaiming not just material inheritance, but the more profound legacy of principle and integrity our parents had always intended to leave. As darkness fell outside the kitchen windows, the home that had witnessed decades of Bennett family history seemed to hold us in a moment of transition, from betrayal toward truth, from shock toward understanding, from fractured relationships toward new configurations built on more honest foundations. The path ahead remained challenging, but for the first time since learning about the manipulated will, I felt genuine hope that something meaningful could emerge from the painful unraveling of deception. Not a return to what had been before, that was impossible now, but the creation of something new that honored what was most valuable in what had been lost. In that quiet kitchen moment, watching my brother navigate the collapse of his marriage with unexpected grace, I recognized that the most important inheritance our parents had left wasn't financial assets or property deeds. It was the capacity to face difficult truths with courage, to choose integrity over comfort, to rebuild after devastation with purpose and principle. That inheritance, unlike material possessions, could never be manipulated or stolen. It lived in us, in the choices we made now and would continue to make in the days ahead, and in that recognition, I found a measure of peace amidst the ongoing turbulence of all that had been revealed. The meeting with Gerald Winters proved even more revelatory than we had anticipated. Philip Harrison, Ryan, and I arrived at the key attorney's downtown office to find Winters already seated with his own lawyer, a stern-looking woman who introduced herself as Patricia Mendoza, specializing in professional ethics defense. The atmosphere was tense, the oak-paneled conference room uncomfortably warm despite the efficient air conditioning. Mr. Winters has prepared a statement, Patricia began, sliding a document across the polished table. He wishes to cooperate, fully in resolving this matter with minimal complications for all parties. Philip reviewed the document carefully while Ryan and I exchanged glances. The formal language of legal proceedings felt surreal against the deeply personal betrayal we were addressing. This is essentially a confession, Philip noted, looking up from the pages. Mr. Winters acknowledges failing to follow proper procedure in revoking the original will, drafting the new document with knowledge of Eleanor Bennett's questionable cognitive state, and allowing Isabel Bennett to exercise undue influence over the proceedings. Gerald Winters, who had remained silent until now, cleared his throat uncomfortably. I want to clarify that I never believed I was participating in elder abuse, he said, his voice strained. Mrs. Bennett, the younger Mrs. Bennett, presented the situation as a simple family decision to redirect assets toward the grandchildren's future. Yet you failed to meet privately with my parents to confirm their wishes without Isabel present, I pointed out. A basic ethical requirement when making significant estate changes. An unfortunate oversight, Patricia interjected smoothly. One Mr. Winters deeply regrets. An oversight that conveniently served Isabel's interests, Ryan said, anger edging his voice. My father had suffered a stroke. My mother was exhibiting clear signs of cognitive impairment. The most basic due diligence would have identified these vulnerabilities. Winters looked genuinely uncomfortable now, sweat beading along his hairline. If I may speak candidly, he said, glancing at his attorney, who nodded reluctantly. When Isabel Bennett first approached me through her aunt. She described a straightforward situation: parents wanting to secure their grandchildren's future by directing assets to their son rather than their childless daughter. It sounded reasonable, particularly given traditional values about family continuity. The casual way he referenced traditional values sent a flash of anger through me. Again, my life choices were being framed as somehow deficient, justifying my disinheritance. "Mr. Winters," I said, working to keep my voice level, "did it not concern you that my parents chose to work with you rather than Philip Harrison, their attorney of over 30 years? Did that not suggest something unusual about the circumstances?" Isabel explained that they wanted discretion, Winters admitted, that they were concerned about hurting your feelings if you discovered the changes before their passing. "And that didn't raise red flags for you?" Ryan pressed. "In retrospect, it should have," Winters conceded. "But at the time, it seemed like a family attempting to avoid conflict while making difficult decisions." Patricia Mendoza intervened, clearly trying to redirect the conversation. "Mr. Winters has provided a complete statement acknowledging his professional failures in this matter. He's willing to cooperate fully with reinstating the original will and testifying, if necessary, about Isabel Bennett's role in orchestrating these changes." Philip tapped the document thoughtfully. "This cooperation significantly simplifies our path forward legally. The original will can be validated relatively quickly, particularly with Mr. Winters' testimony regarding the procedural irregularities in the second document." "And Isabel?" I asked, the question directed more to Philip than to Winters. "That depends partly on your family's wishes," Philip replied carefully. "With both Mr. Winters and Isabel cooperating, criminal charges could potentially be avoided in favor of civil remedies and restitution." Ryan's expression remained troubled. "I keep thinking about my daughters," he said quietly. "About what message we send by allowing these actions to go unpunished beyond financial restitution." An uncomfortable silence settled over the room. The legal professionals clearly wanted a clean, efficient resolution. Ryan and I were grappling with the deeper ethical implications of how we responded to deliberate exploitation. "Perhaps," Philip suggested after a moment, "we could require Isabel to participate in community service specifically focused on elder protection and advocacy. A substantive commitment of time and energy that addresses the nature of the offense, while avoiding the trauma of criminal proceedings for your daughters." The suggestion resonated. Not merely financial restitution, which would be relatively painless for Isabel, given her comfortable lifestyle, but a meaningful investment of herself in preventing the very type of exploitation she had perpetrated. "I think that has merit," I said, looking to Ryan for his response. He nodded slowly. "It feels more constructive than punitive, more focused on repair than retribution." With this conceptual agreement, the meeting shifted to technical details: the legal process for invalidating the second will, the timeline for reinstating the original document, the specific terms of Isabel's cooperation and restitution. Throughout the discussion, Gerald Winters remained largely silent, his earlier confidence replaced by the subdued demeanor of someone confronting the consequences of significant ethical failures. As we prepared to leave, Winters unexpectedly addressed me, directly. "Ms. Bennett," he said, his voice hesitant, "for what it's worth, I am truly sorry. Whatever my professional failings, I never intended to participate in depriving you of your rightful inheritance or in manipulating your parents during a vulnerable time." The apology felt genuine if inadequate against the magnitude of what had occurred. Still, there was something liberating about this moment. This acknowledgement from a key participant that what had happened was unequivocally wrong, that my disinheritance had never been my parents' authentic wish. "Thank you for your cooperation now," I replied, neither accepting nor rejecting his apology explicitly. "The most important thing is ensuring my parents' true intentions are honored." Outside the office building, standing in the bright afternoon sunlight, Ryan checked his phone and sighed heavily. Isabel wants to bring the girls home tonight. Says she's ready to begin the process of explaining things to them. How do you feel about that? I asked. Conflicted, terrified, resolved. He pocketed his phone with deliberate care. But it's necessary. The longer we wait, the more difficult the conversations become. The drive back to the family home was quiet, each of us absorbed in preparing for the challenging evening ahead. Ryan would need to help his daughters begin understanding a situation most adults would struggle to process: that their mother had made serious ethical mistakes, that their parents' marriage would end as a result, that family relationships would be fundamentally altered. Would you be willing to stay? Ryan asked as we pulled into the driveway. When Isabel brings the girls home, not for the initial conversation, that should be just the three of us, but afterward, as a stabilizing presence? The request touched me deeply. Throughout our adult lives, Ryan had maintained careful boundaries between his nuclear family and his relationship with me. Now, he was explicitly inviting me into a critical family moment, acknowledging my importance in his daughters' lives. Going forward. Of course, I agreed. I'll make myself scarce during your conversation, but I'll be here if you need me. Inside, Ryan moved through the house with restless energy, straightening cushions and arranging toys the girls had left scattered before their abrupt departure to their grandmother's. I recognized the behavior. Our mother had always cleaned, when anxious, finding comfort in creating order amid emotional chaos. I keep trying to find the right words, he said, aligning a row of books on a shelf with unnecessary precision. How do you tell an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old that their mother manipulated their dying grandparents? That the family they've known is fundamentally changing? You don't, I said gently. You tell them that Mommy made a serious mistake, that hurt other people's feelings and broke important rules. That you and Mommy need to live separately while you work through some adult problems. That both of you love them completely, and that will never change. Ryan's hands stilled on the books. When did you get so wise about children? He asked, a hint of his old teasing tone breaking through the tension. I may not have children of my own, but I've observed enough family dynamics to recognize what works and what doesn't, I replied. Children need emotional security more than complete information. Details can come later, when they're ready. The sound of car doors closing outside signaled Isabel's arrival with the girls. Ryan took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders like someone preparing to step into a storm. Here we go, he murmured. I retreated to the kitchen as Ryan went to meet them, giving the family privacy for their difficult conversation. Through the partially open door, I could hear Morgan's excited voice. Daddy? We got ice cream on the way home. Followed by Lily's higher-pitched chatter about a butterfly she had seen at Grandma's house. Their innocent enthusiasm contrasted painfully with the conversation I knew was coming. For the next hour, I remained in the kitchen, trying not to eavesdrop but inevitably catching fragments of the family discussion happening in the living room. Isabel's voice, unusually subdued. Ryan's measured tones, carefully modulating emotion. Morgan asking pointed questions with the directness of childhood. Lily's confusion evident in her repeated, "But why?" Eventually, I heard Lily crying, her sobs muffled as if she were being held. The kitchen door pushed open, and Morgan appeared, her small face solemn, her eyes evaluating me with new awareness. At 8, she was already showing signs of emotional intelligence beyond her years. Aunt Charlotte, she said with formal politeness, Daddy said you're staying with us for a while. That's right, I confirmed, unsure how much she had been told about the situation. Because Mommy did something wrong with Grandma and Grandpa's money? The directness of her question caught me off guard. There were some problems with how things were handled, I said carefully. The grown-ups are working to fix those problems now. Morgan considered this, her expression serious. Daddy said you should have gotten half of Grandma and Grandpa's things, but Mommy tried to make it all go to him instead. That's a simplified version, yes. That wasn't fair, she declared, with the absolute moral certainty of childhood. Grandma loved you. She always smiled when she talked about you. Her observation, so simple yet so profound, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. In all the legal discussions and confrontations, this essential truth had sometimes been obscured. My mother had loved me, had been proud of me, had valued me as her daughter regardless of my life choices. "Thank you for saying that, Morgan," I managed, blinking back tears. "That means a lot to me." She nodded solemnly, then asked with practical directness, "Can I have a snack? Daddy and Mommy are still talking and I'm hungry." The ordinary request grounded me, reminding me that amid adult complexities, children's basic needs continued uninterrupted. I prepared apple slices with peanut butter, Morgan's favorite I remembered from previous visits, and sat with her at the kitchen table as she ate. "Is Mommy going to jail?" she asked suddenly, the question revealing the frightening shapes her imagination had been constructing. "No," I assured her quickly. "Mommy made mistakes, but she's working to fix them now. No one is going to jail." "But she and Daddy won't live together anymore," Morgan continued, processing aloud. "Mommy said we'll have 2 homes instead of 1. "That's right, and both homes will be places where you and Lily are loved and safe." Morgan considered this, then asked the question that likely concerned her most. "Will I still see you?" The question pierced straight to my heart. In the midst of her parents' separation and the upheaval of her family structure, this child was worried about maintaining her connection with me, a relationship that had previously been peripheral in her daily life. "Absolutely," I promised. "In fact, you'll probably see more of me than before. I'll be helping your dad, and I want to spend more time with you and Lily." She seemed satisfied with this, returning her attention to her snack with the resilience of childhood. A few minutes later, Ryan appeared in the doorway, holding a tearful Lily against his shoulder. Isabel stood behind them, her perfect composure finally broken, eyes red-rimmed and mascara smudged. "Girls," Ryan said gently, "why don't you go upstairs and pick out some books for bedtime? Aunt Charlotte will come up in a few minutes to read with you." After the children reluctantly departed, an awkward silence fell over the kitchen. Isabel looked smaller somehow, diminished by the consequences of her actions finally becoming tangible in her daughter's confusion and distress. "They took it as well as could be expected," she said finally, her voice hoarse. Morgan asked more questions than I was prepared for. "She's trying to make sense of a situation that doesn't make sense even to adults," Ryan replied. "They both need time, consistency, and honesty appropriate to their ages." Isabel nodded, then turned to me with visible effort. "Charlotte, She hesitated, struggling visibly with what to say. "I've agreed to everything Philip proposed. The original will, the restitution, the community service hours. I want my daughters to see that when you make serious mistakes, you take responsibility and try to make amends." The statement surprised me with its apparent sincerity. Throughout our confrontations, Isabel had focused primarily on justifying her actions or minimizing consequences. Now, facing the reality of explaining her choices to her children, something seemed to have shifted in her perspective. "That's a valuable lesson for them," I acknowledged, neither offering forgiveness nor expressing continued anger. "Children learn more from what we do than what we say." "I've arranged to stay with my mother while I look for an apartment near the girls' school," Isabel continued, addressing Ryan now. "I'd like to maintain their routines as much as possible during the transition. We'll work with the mediator to establish a formal co-parenting schedule," Ryan agreed. "For now, we'll keep things flexible based on what the girls need." The conversation continued in this vein, practical, subdued, focused on the children's well-being rather than the adult's wounded feelings. It was surreal to witness Isabel engaging in reasonable planning after weeks of manipulation and deception. Perhaps facing her daughter's confusion had accomplished what legal threats could not, breaking through her elaborate self-justifications to confront the actual impact of her choices. After finalizing the immediate arrangements, Isabel prepared to leave. At the door, she paused, turning back with unexpected vulnerability. "I never thought it would end like this," she said quietly. "I thought I was securing our future. Instead, I destroyed it." Ryan's expression remained carefully neutral. "Actions have consequences, Isabel. Something we've both tried to teach the girls." "I know," she whispered. "I just never thought the consequences would include losing you." With that, she left, the sound of her car starting and pulling away marking a definitive ending to a chapter of all our lives. Ryan stood motionless in the entryway for several long moments, his expression unreadable. "Are you okay?" I asked. Finally, the question inadequate against the magnitude of what he was experiencing. "Not remotely," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But I will be, eventually. We all will be." He glanced toward the stairs where the girls had disappeared. "They're waiting for their story, if you're still up for reading duty." "Absolutely," I assured him, recognizing his need for a few moments alone. Upstairs, I found Morgan and Lily in their shared bedroom, already in pajamas, a stack of books piled on the bed between them. Lily's eyes were still reddened from crying, but she brightened slightly at my appearance. "Aunt Charlotte, we picked Madeline and the Paper Bag Princess and Grandma's special book," she announced, pointing to a worn volume I recognized immediately. Stories from around the world, the collection our mother had read to us throughout our own childhood. "Excellent choices," I approved, settling onto the bed beside them. As I opened the first book, both girls leaned against me with the easy physical affection of children who feel safe and loved. The familiar weight of their small bodies, the scent of their freshly washed hair, the absolute trust with which they settled in for the stories, all created a moment of unexpected peace amid the turbulence of recent events. I read all three books, doing the different character voices as our mother had always done for us, watching their expressions shift from lingering distress to absorption in the stories. Morgan asked thoughtful questions about Madeline's courage. Lily delighted in the dragon's defeat in the Paper Bag Princess. By the time we finished our mother's folktale collection, Lily was heavy-eyed and yawning. After tucking them in and turning on their nightlight, I found Ryan in the hallway, leaning against the wall, listening to the bedtime routine with an expression of profound gratitude. "Thank you," he said simply as we descended the stairs. They needed that normality, that connection. "They're remarkable children," I told him, "resilient and perceptive." "They get that from our side of the family," Ryan said with unexpected firmness. The Bennett capacity to face difficult truths and adapt to changing circumstances. In the living room, we settled into the familiar comfort of our parents' well-worn furniture. The house felt different now, no longer primarily a repository of painful memories and betrayal, but gradually transforming into a space where healing might eventually be possible. "I've been thinking," Ryan said after a companionable silence, "about what happens when the estate is formally settled." "In what sense?" "Practically speaking, we'll each inherit half of everything, as our parents originally intended. But that creates questions about this house, about how we move forward logistically." The comment caught me by surprise. I had been so focused on uncovering the truth and rectifying the injustice that I had given little thought to the practical implications of restoring the original will. "I suppose we could sell it," I suggested tentatively. "Divide the proceeds equally." Ryan shook his head. "That's the obvious solution, but it doesn't feel right. This house has been in our family for 3 generations. It's where the girls have their strongest memories of mom and dad. It's where our roots are. What are you suggesting? He leaned forward, his expression animated for the first time in days. What if neither of us sold our half? What if we kept the house together? I could live here with the girls, maintaining their stability during the divorce. You could keep your townhouse but have equal access to this place. A family home that belongs to both of us, just as mom and dad intended. The suggestion was unconventional, but oddly appealing. My townhouse suited my independent lifestyle, but there was something deeply comforting about maintaining a connection to the family home, about preserving this physical link to our shared history. That could work, I said thoughtfully. It would give the girls continuity during a challenging transition, and it honors mom and dad's legacy in a way that selling might not. Exactly, Ryan agreed, his enthusiasm building. We could update Dad's home office as a space for you to work when you visit. The garden studio Mom never finished could become a guest apartment for your longer stays. The girls would have both of us actively present in their lives, not just during scheduled visitation times. As he outlined his vision, I recognized what Ryan was really proposing. Not just a practical solution for shared property, but a reimagining of our family structure. In the aftermath of betrayal and loss, he was suggesting we create something new, something that honored our parents' values while adapting to our changed circumstances. It wouldn't be conventional, I noted. Neither was Mom maintaining separate investment accounts while letting Dad handle the insurance business, Ryan countered. They always found ways to honor each other's independence within their partnership. We could do something similar as siblings co-owning this home. The comparison resonated. Our parents' marriage had indeed balanced shared values with individual autonomy, creating a model more nuanced than traditional gender roles might have suggested. Perhaps Ryan and I could develop a similarly balanced approach to sharing this inheritance, not just the physical property, but the legacy of values it represented. I'd like to try, I decided. Not with some rigid arrangement, but as an experiment in creating a new kind of family structure. One where your children have both a father and an aunt actively involved in their daily lives. Ryan's expression softened with evident relief. The girls need that connection to you, to what you represent in our family. The path less traveled, but traveled with purpose and integrity. His characterization of my life choices, not as deficiency or avoidance, but as purposeful alternative, felt like a profound validation. Not from our parents, whose approval I had always assumed but recently questioned, but from my brother who had witnessed my entire journey. What about Isabel? I asked, pragmatic concerns reasserting themselves. How will she feel about me having such an integrated role in the girls' lives here? She'll need to accept it, Ryan said firmly. This isn't about replacing her as their mother. It's about expanding the circle of stable, loving adults in their lives during a challenging transition. If she truly prioritizes their well-being, she'll recognize the value of that. His confidence heartened me. Throughout this ordeal, Ryan had demonstrated unexpected strength and clarity, making difficult decisions guided by principle rather than expediency. The brother I had sometimes dismissed as impulsive and directionless had revealed depths of character I hadn't fully appreciated. That night, I stayed in my childhood bedroom again, listening to the familiar sounds of the old house settling. Down the hall, Ryan was sleeping in the master bedroom he had shared with Isabel during their visits. The girls were nestled in their regular room with its cheerful butterfly decals and overflowing bookshelf. Despite the unresolved complexities still before us, finalizing the legal proceedings, establishing new family routines, helping the girls adjust to their parents' separation, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. The path ahead was neither simple nor painless, but it was grounded in truth rather than deception, in principle rather than manipulation. In the darkness, I remembered something our father had often said when coaching us through childhood disappointments. The measure of a life isn't the absence of difficulty, but how you respond when difficulties arise. By that measure, these painful weeks had revealed strengths I hadn't known I possessed. The courage to confront uncomfortable truths, the resilience to weather profound betrayal, the capacity to envision new possibilities amid apparent endings. Whatever happened next, I would face it with clearer purpose and deeper self-knowledge than before. As sleep finally claimed me, I carried that awareness like a talisman, not a guarantee against future challenges, but a hard-won confidence in my ability to meet them with authenticity and grace. The inheritance that mattered most had never been financial assets or property deeds, but the capacity to live with integrity, even when the path forward wasn't clearly marked. That inheritance remained intact, perhaps even strengthened by the very challenges intended to diminish it. The next morning arrived with unexpected sunshine streaming through the guest room blinds. For a moment, I felt disoriented, the familiar childhood bedroom contrasting with the adult realities awaiting me downstairs. The house was already alive with activity. Children's voices mingled with the clatter of breakfast preparations. In the kitchen, I found a scene of domestic chaos that felt both foreign and strangely appealing. Ryan stood at the stove flipping misshapen pancakes while Morgan carefully measured orange juice into glasses, and Lily attempted to set the table, her small hands struggling with the arrangement of forks and napkins. "Aunt Charlotte!" Lily exclaimed, abandoning her task to rush toward me. "Daddy's making pancakes, but they look funny." "Artistic," Ryan corrected with mock offense. "They're artistic pancakes." "They look like blobs," Morgan declared with the brutal honesty of childhood. Ryan caught my eye over the girls' heads, his expression conveying both amusement and an unspoken request for reinforcement. In that moment, the depth of the change in our relationship crystallized. My brother, who had always been fiercely independent in his family life, was now openly inviting my partnership in this most intimate sphere. "Artistic blobs are the most delicious kind," I said decisively, moving to the cabinet for plates. "And they taste even better when excellent table setters finish their jobs." My gentle redirection worked. Lily returned to her task with renewed focus, while Morgan completed pouring the juice. We settled into a breakfast routine that felt improvised yet surprisingly comfortable, as if we were creating new family patterns in real time. "Dad says you're going to help us fix Grandma and Grandpa's will," Morgan said casually, drowning her artistic blob in syrup. Ryan and I exchanged glances. Evidently, Morgan had been processing our abbreviated explanation overnight. "That's right," I confirmed. "We're making sure their wishes are properly respected." "Because everyone should get what belongs to them," Lily chimed in, clearly repeating something she'd been told. "Exactly," Ryan said, his expression softening as he looked at his daughters. "Grandma and Grandpa wanted both me and Aunt Charlotte to share their things fairly." "Like how we have to share the iPad," Morgan nodded with the sage wisdom of an elder sibling. "Very similar," I agreed, hiding a smile at the comparison between a multi-million-dollar estate and an electronic device. After breakfast, the morning unfolded with surprising normalcy. Ryan took the girls to school while I made phone calls to my office, arranging an extended personal leave. My supervisor was unexpectedly understanding when I explained the situation in broad strokes. "Family comes first, Charlotte," she said firmly. "The Meridian account will still be here when you return. Take the time you need to handle these matters properly." Her response surprised me. Throughout my career, I had carefully compartmentalized my personal and professional lives, rarely bringing family matters into workplace conversations. Perhaps I had underestimated my colleagues' capacity for empathy, automatically assuming that any personal crisis would be viewed as a professional liability. When Ryan returned from the school drop-off, he found me in our father's home office, reviewing documents Philip had emailed that morning. "How are the girls doing?" I asked, looking up from the papers. Ryan leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion momentarily visible beneath his composed exterior. "Adjusting, I think." Morgan asked 3 separate teachers if they knew where their classroom supplies were stored. Control through organization, I noted with a smile. A classic Bennett coping mechanism. Just like her aunt, Ryan acknowledged. Lily's approach is different. She's sticking close to her friends, seeking connection. She made her entire table group draw pictures of butterflies this morning. Finding beauty amid uncertainty, I observed. Also a Bennett trait, though one I've sometimes neglected to cultivate. The casual comparison of the girls' coping strategies to our own family patterns felt significant. A recognition that despite Isabel's betrayal, her daughters remained deeply connected to the Bennett family legacy, carrying forward traits and tendencies shaped by generations before them. Philip's documents look straightforward, I said, shifting to the practical matters at hand. Standard legal procedures to invalidate the second, based on procedural defects and evidence of undue influence. He's included affidavits from Teresa Jimenez and Gerald Winters, which should streamline the process considerably. Ryan nodded, moving into the office to examine the papers. What's the timeline? Relatively quick, given the cooperative approach. 3 to 4 weeks for the probate court to review everything and issue a ruling, assuming no unexpected complications. And in the meantime? We proceed as planned. You and the girls stay here. I split my time between my townhouse and helping establish new routines here. Isabel begins her supervised visitation schedule tomorrow. The temporary arrangements felt increasingly permanent, a bridge between what had been and what would be. As we reviewed the documents together, I was struck by how naturally Ryan and I had fallen into a partnership that balanced his emotional insight with my organizational strengths, his intuitive decision-making with my analytical approach. Philip mentioned something else, I added, pulling up an email on my phone. The consulting fees Isabel received have been traced to some interesting expenditures. Ryan's expression tightened. What kind of expenditures? Private school. Tuition payments for the next 3 years. Investment accounts in the girls' names, and a down payment on a lakefront vacation property held in a family trust with Morgan and Lily as beneficiaries. The information landed heavily between us. Even in her manipulation and deception, Isabel had directed the misappropriated funds toward her daughter's future security rather than personal luxuries. She really did believe she was securing their future, Ryan said quietly. As if that justifies the methods. It complicates the narrative, I acknowledged, makes it more than simple greed or opportunism. Does it change anything legally? I shook my head. The improper acquisition remains the same regardless of how the funds were used. But it might affect how we frame this for the girls as they grow older. There's a difference between your mother stole money for herself and your mother inappropriately diverted funds for your benefit using unethical means. Ryan leaned back in the office chair, a gesture reminiscent of our father when he was processing complex information. How do you always find these nuanced perspectives? I've been fluctuating between rage and heartbreak, while you somehow maintain this balanced view. Professional training, I smiled slightly. Financial controllers spend their days in ethical gray areas, identifying where well-intended actions cross problematic lines. Black and white moralizing doesn't survive long in corporate finance. I could use some of that perspective, Ryan admitted, for the girls' sake if nothing else. A notification chimed on my phone, a calendar reminder, for the meeting I had scheduled with Isabel at her mother's house that afternoon. Ryan raised an eyebrow questioningly. I asked to meet with her privately, I explained. There are aspects of this situation that need discussion between us, without the complications of your history together. Should I be concerned? Not at all, I assured him. This isn't about revenge or confrontation. It's about establishing clear boundaries going forward, particularly regarding my relationship with Morgan and Lily. Ryan nodded, though concern lingered in his expression. Just remember that whatever her explanations or justifications, Her actions nearly deprived you of your rightful inheritance and exploited our parents' vulnerability. I'm not likely to forget that, I said dryly. But moving forward productively requires more than just holding on to justified anger. Margaret Cavendish's suburban ranch house looked exactly as I remembered from the few social gatherings our families had shared over the years, immaculately maintained but somewhat dated, with the floral wallpaper and formal furniture arrangements popular during my parents' generation. Isabel opened the door immediately at my knock, her appearance markedly different from our previous encounters. Gone was the polished, designer-clad, perfect wife and mother. In her place stood a woman in simple jeans and a sweater, hair pulled, back in a casual ponytail, face bare of makeup. "Charlotte, thank you for coming," she said, stepping back to allow me entry. "My mother is out for the afternoon. I thought privacy would be better for our conversation." I followed her to a sunroom at the back of the house, where tea had been prepared on a small table overlooking a well-tended garden. The domesticity of the scene felt incongruous against the serious matters to be discussed. "Ryan told me you're helping the girls adjust," Isabel began, pouring tea with hands that trembled slightly. "I appreciate that, whatever you might think of me." "The girls' well-being is separate from my feelings about your actions," I replied, accepting the offered cup. "They deserve stability and support during this transition." Isabel nodded, settling into her chair with visible effort to maintain composure. "I've been trying to understand it myself, how I became someone who would manipulate elderly in-laws, who would deliberately exclude their daughter from her inheritance, who would exploit family trust so completely." Her apparent self-reflection surprised me. I had expected defensive justification, perhaps even continued attempts at manipulation. Instead, she seemed to be genuinely grappling with the ethical dimensions of her actions. "What have you concluded?" I asked, neither offering absolution, nor expressing continued condemnation. "That good intentions don't justify unethical methods," she said quietly. "That my fear for my daughter's future security corrupted my judgment so completely that I convinced myself exploitation was justifiable protection." She met my gaze directly. "And that I owe you an apology that can never be adequate against the harm I caused." The straightforward acknowledgement caught me off guard. Throughout our prior confrontations, Isabel had maintained elaborate justifications and deflections. This unvarnished admission represented a significant shift. "What changed?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Between our conversation at the Riverside Cafe and now?" "Morgan," Isabel answered, unexpected tears filling her eyes. "She asked me, directly, if I had taken something that belonged to you." When I tried to explain about helping Grandma make decisions, she said, "But Aunt Charlotte is family too." The simplicity of a child's moral framework cut through all my sophisticated rationalizations. The account rang true. Morgan's clear-eyed perspective on fairness had been evident in her comment about sharing the iPad, a fundamental understanding that family meant equitable treatment regardless of circumstance. Children often see ethical principles more clearly than adults, I observed. Before we complicate them with rationalizations and exceptions. Isabel nodded, wiping away tears with a tissue pulled from her pocket. "I've agreed to everything the lawyers proposed. Restitution, community service, supervised visitation initially. But there's something else I need to address directly with you." I waited, curious about what aspect of the situation remained unaddressed between us. "Your relationship with the girls?" Isabel continued. "Ryan mentioned you'll be spending significant time at the house, becoming more involved in their daily lives." "That's correct," I confirmed, prepared for potential resistance. "Ryan and I are planning to co-own the family home, with him and the girls living there full-time while I maintain regular presence in their lives." To my surprise, Isabel nodded. "I think that's appropriate. They need the stability of the home they know, and they need positive female influence during a time when their perception of me will inevitably be complicated. Her acceptance seemed too readily offered, making me wary of hidden agendas. You have no concerns about my increased role in their lives? Concerns, yes, she admitted. Fear that they might come to prefer your company to mine. Jealousy over shared experiences I'll miss while limited to visitation. Worry that they'll adopt your independent approach to life rather than valuing traditional family formation. The honesty of her self-assessment was disarming. Those are understandable feelings. But not justification for interference, Isabel concluded firmly. My actions have created this situation. The consequences include accepting that my children will now have multiple female influences in their lives, not just their mother. I have no intention of replacing you, I clarified. They need their mother, whatever mistakes you've made. I know, Isabel said softly, and I'm working to become someone worthy of their trust again, someone who models integrity rather than expediency. She hesitated, then added, the community service requirement, with the Elder Protection Organization, I've decided to extend it beyond the mandated hours, to make it a permanent commitment. This additional detail further complicated my perception of Isabel. Was this genuine remorse driving meaningful change, or strategic image rehabilitation? With someone who had demonstrated such capacity for calculated deception, discerning authentic transformation required cautious assessment over time. Actions will demonstrate your sincerity more than words, I noted, neither dismissing her stated intentions nor fully embracing them. I understand your skepticism, Isabel acknowledged. I've given you every reason to doubt my honesty or my capacity for genuine change. Our conversation continued for another hour, addressing practical arrangements for the girls' transitions between households, expectations for family events where we would both be present, and specific boundaries regarding financial decisions affecting Morgan and Lily going forward. Throughout the discussion, Isabel maintained the same direct, undefensive approach, acknowledging her wrongdoing without excuses while committing to specific, measurable changes in her behavior. Whether this represented genuine transformation or sophisticated manipulation remained to be seen, but the conversation established a workable framework for moving forward regardless of her internal motivations. As I prepared to leave, Isabel handed me a small box. This was among Eleanor's personal items, she explained. It has your name on it. I kept it back when we were cleaning out her dresser after the funeral. Another inexcusable action I need to rectify. The box was small, covered in faded velvet, clearly a jewelry case of some kind. Inside, I found my mother's emerald earrings, pieces she had worn on special occasions throughout my childhood, always paired with the elegant green silk scarf my father had given her on their 25th anniversary. There's a note, Isabel added, nodding toward a folded paper tucked into the lid. My mother's distinctive handwriting filled the small card. For Charlotte, who always admired these, and who carries their color in her eyes. With all my love, Mom. The simple message brought unexpected tears. Even as her cognitive clarity had been fading, even as Isabel was manipulating estate matters around her, my mother had taken time to personally designate this meaningful gift specifically for me. Thank you for returning these, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.